I've been watching wrestling for a long time. I've seen bad promos, bad creative decisions, feuds that go absolutely nowhere, and I thought I'd seen most of what this business could throw at me. But something happened in the past few weeks that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. In the same 7 days, WWE and AEW both produced segments that got booed by their own crowds, by the people who paid to be there. And this wasn't some throwaway episode for either company. Both of them were heading into their biggest shows of the year. WrestleMania season on one side, Revolution on the other. And these were supposed to be the weeks where everything builds to something. So today we're looking at both segments, figuring out which one was actually worse, and asking whether any of this was accidental. Let's start with WWE. A few weeks before WrestleMania, Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley had this back and forth on social media that people actually got invested in. It had some real edge to it. The kind of thing where you can't fully tell if it's part of the show or something genuine. And that uncertainty is what made it interesting. Last year, Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair had a similar kind of tension building into their match, and it worked. So you can see what WWE was going for here. They wanted that same energy, that feeling of two people who actually don't like each other being forced into the same building. Then they brought them to SmackDown for the face-to-face segment, and whatever you were expecting, this was not it. The whole thing became a conversation about the size of their muscles. Jade said her shoulders are bigger, her legs are more powerful, her conditioning is better. Rhea came back and said the difference between them is that Jade's body is built for show, while hers is built for fighting. That she trains so her body can survive in this business, not to look good. And I understand what they were going for. There is a section of wrestling fans, the more internet-savvy crowd, that has always been skeptical of athletes who come in with an impressive physique but not much else behind it. The idea is to position Jade as that kind of person, the bodybuilder type who looks the part but can't really wrestle, and make Rhea the scrappy technical fighter that the smarter fans respect. It's a real dynamic that exists in wrestling. The problem is that this storyline completely falls apart the moment you spend 5 seconds thinking about it. Because Jade Cargill is the WWE Women's Champion. She has beaten everyone in front of her, and she has done it convincingly. So if her muscles are just for show and she has no real wrestling ability, that retroactively makes every single person she has beaten look worse. You have just told the audience that your champion is not a real wrestler, and somehow she has still been dominating the entire division. Every match she has had means less now, and every opponent she beat along the way takes a hit too. And then there is the other thing, the thing that nobody in that production meeting apparently noticed. This entire segment is built around comparing their bodies. That is the whole premise. And Jade came out dressed in a way where you genuinely could not see her physique. She was completely covered up. So she is standing there talking about how her shoulders are bigger and her legs are more powerful, and nobody in the building can actually see what she is talking about. Rhea, standing next to her, honestly looked more physically imposing. It is one of those situations where it clearly made perfect sense to whoever wrote it, and then they put it on television and something just went completely wrong between the idea and the execution. Now let's talk about AEW, because what happened on Dynamite was a different kind of disaster entirely. The go-home episode before Revolution, the final show before their biggest pay-per-view of the year, closed with a press conference between MJF and Hangman Adam Page. The idea was clearly to mimic the kind of UFC and boxing pre-fight press conferences that occasionally go viral, where two fighters are sitting a few feet apart and the tension just comes off the screen naturally. The thing about those moments in combat sports is that they work because nobody is performing. The fighters actually dislike each other, or they are nervous, or they are competing for something real, and you can feel all of that without anyone having to act. The camera just catches it. You cannot replicate that by writing a script and hiring journalists to ask predetermined questions in an echoey room while a wrestling crowd watches it on a screen in the arena they are sitting in. And that crowd made their feelings very clear. People were chanting boring, chanting bullshit, sitting there watching a press conference projected on a Titantron after 2 hours of good wrestling. AEW's entire identity, the thing that separates them and the thing their fans show up for, is that they prioritize wrestling over everything else. Their own slogan is "We're the best wrestle." So when you close your most important episode of the year with something that has no wrestling in it at all, you are asking your audience to be interested in the one thing they specifically did not come for. What makes it worse is that one of the two people in that room actually understood the assignment. MJF as a character can exist in a press conference setting. His whole thing is that he talks. He is slippery and condescending and genuinely entertaining when he has room to be himself, and you can see moments in that segment where he is doing exactly that. He is the one who eventually grabbed a beer and threw it in Hangman's face to spark the brawl, and that moment worked because it felt like something that character would actually do. Hangman, on the other hand, looked like he was acting in a completely different production. Every question that came his way was met with this long, dramatic pause, the kind of silence that only exists in movies where the score swells and you are supposed to feel the weight of the moment. He was playing a man wrestling with his destiny. The journalists were asking about his title match and he was somewhere else entirely, staring into the middle distance like he was about to monologue about his father. It looked performative in a way that was genuinely painful to watch, and the crowd, who had been into the show all night, could not get behind it. Dave Meltzer, arguably the most well-known wrestling journalist in the world, was sitting in the front row of that building and did not even get to ask a question. That detail alone tells you something about how this was put together. So, which one was actually worse? Both failed in real and specific ways. These two segments happened in the same week, at the exact moment when both companies needed their audiences locked in and excited, and both got the same reaction from the people watching. So either two of the biggest wrestling companies in the world independently, simultaneously, with no coordination whatsoever, decided to produce historically bad television at the exact same time. Or there is an agreement that took place in a back room where the people running these companies looked at each other and said, "What if we just did something terrible this week and saw what happened?" I cannot prove the second theory. I genuinely cannot. But the first one requires me to believe this was all just a coincidence. And I have been watching wrestling long enough to know that nothing in this business is ever just a coincidence. The truth is probably simpler and somehow more depressing than either of those options. They both just thought these were good ideas. And honestly, that might be the scariest part of all of this.